A slip of the tongue may mean the difference between victory and defeat.
With a quick mind and a ready smile. How to lose friends and infuriate people, all in one easy lesson.
Made possible only through years of research.
If you are to impress them, you must interest them.
Truth.
And soul.
Truth and Soul Incorporated, the New Zealand advertising podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Truth and Soul Incorporated podcast. Already the most successful podcast I've ever done, so thank you for listening. And just in terms of some earlier versions that we did, the number 3 with Mike Watson is apparently the least listened to, which I think is wrong. I think it's because he's not got a very interesting name. Sorry, Mike, but that's true. I was talking to Lee from Lancashire, who is an avid fan, listened to all 4, and he said that was in fact the one he most enjoyed. And Steve O from Oriwa wants to do more, so he's going to send in a list, so hopefully that will work. Now, shout out to anyone in particular that you'd like to hear from. Today's podcast features Josh Moore. Josh is currently running Pitchblack Partnership with his merry band down in Drake Street. We talked about his adventures in New Zealand, Australia and London as he sought to make his way in the advertising world. Amongst others, he shares some interesting insights about the TUI's Yeah Right campaign and the Spates Pub to London campaigns. And don't worry, people, put your evil tweets away. He doesn't actually claim to have done them, but he has got some good background there. He also talks a lot about his time at Y&R and the famous McWhopper campaign that won more than enough awards to break Steve Kane's suitcase. This podcast has been delayed as Jonathan at Franklin Road had to spend quite some time editing down some of the juiciest stories, but I think there's enough to keep you interested without upsetting the lawyers. Thank you.
And soul.
So hello everybody. Today we are talking to Josh Moore. Josh Moore is a Kiwi ECD in New Zealand, which is becoming increasingly common these days. Didn't used to be the case. He started off in New Zealand, went over to Australia, came back to New Zealand, and currently is managing partner.
No? Principal partner.
Partner at
all sorts of made-up titles.
At Pitchblack. So, and I think I don't know if Josh would agree with it, but one of the extraordinary achievements of his career was when Y&R New Zealand won Agency of the Year at D&AD in London. But we'll come on to that in time. So, Josh, thanks for coming. If you could possibly start by giving how did you get into this business in the first place?
I started off probably entering a competition, the old original Access competition, which was a brief that was printed in the full page in the Dominion or Evening Post in Wellington, which was I can't remember what the brief was for, but it was no doubt probably the fire department or some sort of first responder kind of a brief to how do we get more people into. Actually, no, I think it was the police. How do we get more people into? Into police.
I thought you were applying for the police. So that's curious because Regan Grafton was exactly the same. He did this. So did you know what advertising was before you, or you just went, this looks interesting?
No, so I was at design school in Wellington, and one of the papers was advertising. So I went into design school with the ambition to be a children's storybook illustrator. Any
particular reason? It looked easy?
It just looked like fun. It looked like a genuine career path. I think it was just illustration in general, and then sort of at a certain point in time, it's like children's storybooks seem a hell of a lot more fun than anything else. Mr. Mean, probably inspired by Mr. Mean series and bits and pieces. So, a successful giant children's storybook series.
Which one are you?
Mr. Tickle probably would be a good one.
When I left DDB. Was it DDB? Yeah, when I left DDB, they gave me a card. It was Mr. Grumpy.
I don't understand that. That just
I don't know where that came from.
No, that doesn't seem like it would
sit well. Being ironic.
Anyway, went into design school to to be an illustrator. And then advertising sort of popped up, and it seemed to be a combination of all the skills that you were learning at design school, plus ideas, which didn't seem to be a big part of some of the other kind of courses that you could take, or directions you could kind of follow. It seemed to be a hell of a lot more adventurous. We had tutors that would come in from Saatchi's. They were generally a bit drunk in hindsight, but they were very
in the morning or
sort of early afternoon, late morning.
Yeah.
But they seemed to be doing things that were a hell of a lot more fun. Like of all the different sort of design fields, people that you meet from all the different design fields, so the advertising guys seem to be the ones who were doing things that were really interesting. It was obviously really public. I remember the campaign that probably persuaded me to get into advertising was something art directed by Len Cheeseman, and it was a DB Breweries campaign. But it was this beautifully crafted typography. It was all found woodblock. You probably still remember it. It was like a stunning billboard campaign. Yeah, all found woodblock from a printer's press, and then beautiful little kind of pack shots. Just really, really clever headlines and really well crafted.
Not that Len would have had anything to do with the headlines, but it's curious that he was had an influence on you starting out in your career, because when I was in London, he was one of the tutors on the course before he came out here. So he was teaching me and Mike O'Sullivan, who I was working with at the time, attempting to teach us about typography using Letraset, which wasn't great. And he subsequently, I met him at a ward about 10 years ago, and he told me that I think the implication was that we were responsible for the demise of New Zealand advertising. So, Len, if you're listening, probably very true. More than happy to have you on and have a chat. But sorry, Josh.
Yeah, no, it was getting to the end of that. I think it was like 3 years or something. Up came this. I think maybe we went into Saatchi's to say, how do we get into advertising? And we were told that there's a brief that comes out in the newspaper, which in hindsight is something that we should do now, because it was really, really, really good. Like once you got in, you met a real breadth of people.
Yeah. So
it wasn't probably as it is today when you're sort of everyone's 17. I think we were probably the only 21-year-olds. I think there was a in the course.
There were quite a few older people had tried.
Yeah, totally. There was Hill. I think Hill was
James.
Hill was in there, I think. And he was a policeman or something. Is that right?
No, Glenn Wood was a policeman.
Oh, right.
I don't think.
Or maybe it wasn't Hill then. Maybe it was someone else. There was definitely a policeman in there.
Yeah. There's always one.
Then I think that year there was Lucian Law was in there.
Right.
Who else? There's definitely, and Lucian's partner.
Leon.
I think Leon might have been in there as well. Seymour Pope was in that.
Yeah.
And I think Tim Hughes was in the same course, or maybe he'd gone in the year before. I can't quite remember, but it was a fantastic way in. Yeah.
It's interesting that such a formative part, all those people who are still in the industry now, and the guys that I went to college with in London 30 odd years ago, and I still keep in touch with them through the magic of Facebook.
Mm-mm. Yeah, no, I think it was just because it was the first filter as well. Yeah. So you had to answer an actual brief. You had to come up with an actual idea. So you probably got more out of that one brief than you did out of sort of 6 months in another course.
Yeah.
And that was really good. So that was then really intense of you to come to Auckland, which was a big deal coming from Wellington, where I'd never actually been to Auckland. So came up here, did the week's course. I think you went back down, and then they put us into Goldsack Harris, run by a guy called Ross Goldsack, who I still know very well today.
Yeah.
And the first unpaid job we had in there for about 6 months was writing TUI billboards. So that was probably the best. From an art director's point of view, it wasn't. But
this was before Year Right, I'm guessing.
This was Year Right. Yeah, so I think Year Right had been created at Mojo, I think, but then they'd lost the account. Sort of gone to, and I think they must have lost the account really early on, because a lot of the billboards that are in, there's a little book of classic sort of Year Right billboards, and we've got a lot of the billboards that are in there, and they're from the time at Goldsack Harris. So not sure whether Year Right had been sort of that well formed before the account moved. So I don't know what the politics behind that account moving, but yeah.
Well, I know that I think Richard Maddox, I don't think he would claim to be the main instigator, but I'm pretty sure he worked on it at Mojo.
I think it was Daryl Parsons. Might be.
I thought it was Sean from Aussie.
Cummins?
Right. Yeah.
Ah, you're right.
Yes, yeah. He's definitely in the room, if not the main instigator.
It was a funny campaign though, because it was so no one really rated it at that point in time. So we were the interns. It was like, here's these sort of formulaic billboards. No one can really be bothered working on it. Here, you just take them and just write 100 of them, and we'll pick a few. But they actually were really good. It was incredibly disciplined, because you only had like 6 words and you had to paint a picture. You had no art direction because it was black and white. And the trick they'd come up with was, I think, effectively just sticking up
stuck the type on the middle of it.
Yeah, so the billboard remained the same the whole time, and they'd just post a new I think it might have even been paper. They just stick paper over the top for
it would be
nice and cheap. So that was pretty good. So you go out on the weekend, you were the target market, so you go out on the weekend, have a good time, do something stupid, and then turn it into a billboard on Monday morning.
It's interesting, I think, that often with great campaigns, when they first come out, people are like, it's okay. But after, Goldstein came out first, Ed came out, everybody hated it, so it was rubbish. But once it gets into culture and people get used to it, and they write their own ones and it adapts. So
yeah, I think it was probably the beginning of people seeing that platforms could be amazingly powerful. And that, like you look at Pick and Save, so a stickman now. It basically was a stickman.
Yeah.
But in a lot of respects, probably even smarter, because it was just cheap billboards.
Yeah.
And you could put them up. And I think probably the other thing that was clever, like the fact that they could just paste up some A3 type over the top of the billboard, just meant they could be so quick. So it was actually probably from a social commentary kind of point of view, probably one of the first campaigns to be as fast as a digital banner. Yeah. It was an idea could be thought of on a Saturday and be up there by Tuesday, at least at a few billboards around town, that sort of stuff. It was pretty cool.
You're listening to Truth
and Soul,
the New Zealand Advertising Podcast.
Yeah, I was at Goldstick Harris for a while, so we had the privilege of doing year-out billboards. So that was cool. So we did that for a while, and then and at the time this was with Seymour Pope, my creative partner, and so that was an unpaid intern job. And so even then, sort of in Wellington, there wasn't a hell of a lot of paid junior creative jobs. And then we got a phone call from some friends of ours from Wellington who'd moved to Auckland and were working at Mojo, Greg and Tony, who are art director copywriter team, and they said they had a new job at somewhere called Generator, which is this new very cool independently owned agency, and they were leaving Mojo, and they were asked to, if there was some team they could recommend to fill their Mojo job. So they recommended us. We got a call from Lockie McPherson, and he said, if you can be here tomorrow for an interview, I'll consider you. So we had no money. I think we had about $300 between us, which was enough for a tank of gas there and back. So jumped in the car, in a borrowed car, drove to Auckland, got there in time for the interview, and we had this very piercing character called Daryl Parsons come and analyse our
the
book.
enigmatic Daryl
Yes,
Parsons,
so we thought we were getting sort of Lockie, who we'd managed to find a picture of, because there was no sort of internet, so we managed to find a picture of him.
No
in some
podcast
press
to tell you
magazine.
what he was doing.
There's no podcast. And but then this guy sort of with his cap on backwards kind of came into the room, flicked through the book, muttered some sort of positive things, said, don't worry about what Lockie says, you've got the job, or you'll get the job, or something like that. And I think so. They obviously had some sort of plan to play good cop, bad cop. So Lockie kind of came in and sort of looked at it like it was, pretty ordinary. And then so we sort of left, not quite knowing we didn't get offered the job, so we didn't quite know the hell was going on. And then we got a call late on a Friday saying, if you can be at work on Monday, you've got the job. So I think we'd driven back to Wellington by now. So we had to pack up everything and drive to Auckland, move to Auckland and over the weekend.
Yeah.
But that was awesome. So we're in Mojo getting paid, I think, $18,000 a year, which was not a lot of money, but working on some really cool stuff. So, and we're immediately working with Mikhail Gurman, Lockie, Daryl, I think Henko, Paul Hankinson was there at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we arrived there and I think there must have been post Mike O'Sullivan. He must have gone to Colenso maybe at that point. So yeah, it was a really, really good bunch of people and a very fun agency dedicated to great ideas. You know, the whole thing was about, you know, is it a great idea or not? There was sort of never really seemed to be any clients who were there for some kind of run-of-the-mill formulaic nonsense. So it was really, really good. Mikhail was an amazing art director who focused on fashion, but really is just good at anything. And Lockie and Henko were just great ideas people. Henko's a brilliant writer. Yeah. You know, Lockie's a great art director. So yeah, really good people to learn from. And then of course Daryl was there sort of pushing the envelope on pretty much everything the entire time. So yeah, there's just really good mentors. Which in hindsight was massively important, I suppose, at that time. And we got to make Helen Stein's and Glasson's ads.
Yeah.
Which probably one of the best. After having done the year 8 stuff, probably was probably equivalent in TV. Like simple 2-shotters, had to have a great idea.
So what was your favourite Glasson's / Helen Stein's ad? So try and look it up, put it on the website.
Favourite one is probably the two blokes in a car with a missing windscreen, wearing their ski gear and driving in a storm. So I think it's called something like Yellow. It's called Station Wagon.
Yeah.
So you just open on two guys who've obviously lost their windscreen on the way to the mountain. They've got their goggles on. It's a blizzard. The windscreen's completely gone. And it was for, I think it was, it was for 2 polar fleece for $50 and a free T-shirt. And so a nice little tracking shot goes down the side of the car, and the T-shirt's jammed in the gas tank instead of a gas cap.
Yeah.
And that was just, it was great tracks. Like I think the way it worked is you wrote the spot, you had to obviously have great shots of the product. So the polar fleece were, you had to frame up the polar fleece really, really well in shot. But the things like white T-shirts, you could just jam them in a gas tank. So it was pretty loose. It was before there was any real road rules about what you could and couldn't show. Obviously today you can have a missing windscreen, no gas cap. But yeah, there's a hell of a lot of fun and freedom that basically whatever you came up with for Helen Stein's and Glasson's pretty much got through. And it was a great experience from the point of view that you'd then watch Mikhail would be sort of sitting at his desk. He'd ring Tim Glasson and talk through the scripts and get them approved. And it was the first probably understanding of, okay, it's actually about the client relationship, not about not just about you've got a great idea and someone should just buy it. You've actually got to be super, super tight with the client, and the client's got to be brave.
So from Mojo?
From Mojo, what happened? So Daryl Parsons was probably the bit of a hot shot in the industry at the time, and he got poached to go to FCB across the road. And he was there for, I think, about a month, and rang up one day and said, come to FCB. There's some great briefs. They don't make any good work, which looks like opportunity. So we went over there, and it was a very, very traditional agency. It was so different to Mojo. It was like unbelievable. But Muzza was there. So it's where I met Murray Watt, who was just, phenomenal writer. So it was, he was fantastic. Just incredibly hardworking and
Writer/farmer.
Writer/farmer. Yeah, absolutely. So he seemed to spend all of his time writing in order to pay for his farm. I couldn't quite figure out how that worked, but just as such a good bloke and really good, real talent and really down to earth. So he probably was the person who kept everyone reasonably sane. Daryl would spend most of his time. He'd made a bed under his desk, so he would seem to spend most of his time asleep under the desk because he had I can't remember what it was. He had a sleeping issue. He couldn't sleep at night, so he would do all of his ideas at night and then come in and sleep under the desk, where he could be kind of tapped on the shoulder if anyone needed him. So it was it was probably more eccentric at FCB than it was at Mojo, weirdly.
That's advertising.
Possible. It's definitely not the FCB that it is today, and I'm not even sure if a lot of the FCBs have stuck around for a long, long time, but I'm not sure if there's anyone from the Parnell days still in that business. But yeah, and then we had, it was quite fascinating. Then we had this, who was the CEO? He's like the nicest bloke in the world. Really, really lovely guy. But he had an issue. He had some sort of stomach pain.
Not
continuous stomach pain. No, I don't think so. So he would put a sort of a towel under the door in his office and smoke a lot of pot. So it was there was always this sort of in this really conservative agency, this really sort of quite loose CEO, but you wouldn't see a lot of him. He'd just be he'd obviously getting a lot done behind the door, and everyone sort of just accepted it. He just had this. It was sort of medicinal marijuana. He had this kind of constant problem. But yeah, there was just it was a strange agency from the point of view of just the contrasts were just amazing.
But great from storytelling.
Oh, totally.
Point of view,
totally. So I think what happened there. So I then got a call from Ollie Maisie at Generator, where all of kind of my creative peers or guys I'd met about the same agents and stuff had all sort of ended up saying, "I've got a great role for you. Can you come and start?" And that coincided with the week when I was trying to sell this Raro commercial that I absolutely loved, that the client had actually bought for the first time, like a funny idea for powdered sugary pineapple drink or whatever it was. And it was what was it? And the brief on Raro was something like, it's for clever kids. So it was set in a swimming pool in a Fiji resort. The kids turn up in the morning to get to the pool, and it's packed. It's overpacked with hundreds of kids and parents and the elderly, or whatever. And this clever kid jumps in the pool with an open packet of pineapple Raro in his pocket, creates this enormous yellow stain. Everyone points at it, runs screaming from the pool, and then his mates who are hiding in the bush jump in, and they have the whole pool to themselves. And it was, the client had pretty much bought had bought it. And then that particular creative director, whose name we can't remember, unsold it, like blatantly in a meeting, and said it was far too edgy. This was where, I think it was the production meeting we were actually sitting in when he decided to unsell it. And that was, I think we had words after that, and what happened? Then the next day I got called into work, and he took me into the boardroom, gave me a check for like $5,500 and said, "Right, you've got to go. But we'll give you this check to sweeten it." So I took the check and
took the
foolishly said, I actually already have a job at Generator. I'm starting in a week. Which in hindsight, he was actually very good not to ring the accounts department and cancel that check. So that was, so I was pretty much got fired, but at the same time I already had a new job, and then I got a bonus check, which was pretty cool.
Good times.
It was good times. So then went off to Generator, which was this real hot shop. At the time, that was owned by, I think, Bates Palace had just bought it, whoever the owners of Bates Palace were. Was it WPP? No.
It was Bates.
It was Bates. Bates Network. Yeah. So they just bought Generator, the independent agency. So that was then owned by James Mock. Well, the partners were still James Mock, Andrew Stone, Nick Bayliss, and Matt Simpkins. And then Ollie Maisie had been brought in to be the new creative director, because they sort of decided that they needed some stronger creative leadership. I think James Mock had decided he wanted to be a strategist, and Matt basically decided he was wanted to have a little bit of a break after, I think, 5 years or 7 years of building Generator.
Yeah.
So they brought in Ollie. So Ollie brought in Tim Hughes, myself, Seymour Pope, Martin Brown was there, who was amazing. Then Nick and then Chris Schofield and Billy McQueen. Yeah, and so there was this fantastic department. So it was really it was a whole bunch of teams that have been winning quite a decent number of awards at sort of Access, all came together. It was Martin and Ollie doing a lot of the work. James Mock coming in and doing a lot of art direction every once in a while, but mainly I think focused on strategy. And that was a great.
I'm just thinking
Another
all
great agency.
those characters are around now. Still
Yeah,
in the industry.
absolutely.
And that was probably about 18 years ago.
Yeah, totally.
Early 2000s.
Yeah, Schofield, Chris and Billy are at Shine.
Yes.
I think they're both partners in Shine, and then
Brown is at Shine.
and Martin's at Shine. Tim is ECD at True.
Yeah.
Seymour's a director based in Wellington, and sort of writing and directing based in Wellington. So yeah, no, it was good. Ollie picked a great team. It was a hell of a lot of fun, and it was that sort of stage in the agency. It was sort of a reverse takeover of Bates Palace. So you had this kind of highly motivated management team who were really into good ideas. So it was sort of perfect timing, and that went pretty well for sort of two or 3 years, and then it was that classic sort of earn out phase. And so probably some of the focus came off from partners' point of view, and fair enough, they'd made their money, and then I think the agency sort of probably lost a little bit of direction at that point.
You're listening to Truth and Soul.
Then Seymour and I went overseas for 12 months. Went off to the UK.
Mm-hmm. Where did you work there?
So that's a funny story. So we knew James. Oh, what the hell's his name? Who's this New Zealand
I'm glad
CEO,
I'm not the only one who forgets
CEO
names.
of Saatchi and Saatchi. The guy who
James Hall.
Is it Hall? James Hall.
Yeah,
it is James Hall. James Hall, who now owns Shine, part of Shine.
Yes,
James Hall. Yeah.
I'm not sure he's still. Yes, I think he is still.
So we had a job organised with James at Saatchi's in London, but we didn't have a contract. And in hindsight, I remember thinking this is probably a little bit dodgy. But we had a really good book. We'd won a lot of good awards. It was like the perfect timing to go offshore. And so instead of going through a recruiter, we made a few calls through people that we knew in bits and pieces, and this job was arranged for us. And we were told to turn up on a certain day in London, rock into Saatchi's, and it would all sort of be.
Who was the creative director then?
I had no idea. So it was all organised through James, and it wasn't sort of in the days when it was necessarily that easy to just sort of dial up the internet and find these things out. And we would have thought that.
He might have mentioned it to someone.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of would have been mentioned. There probably would have been some slightly more formal emails than just rock up. So then we got a call from James's PA. This having kind of moved our entire life, sold cars, sold everything, blah, blah, blah. Gone to London, found a flat. Got a call on this Monday to say, James has got a really, really big week on this week, come next Monday. And this sort of happened for a couple of Mondays. I was like, oh, here we go, this is not good. So then we went to see him, and he said, guys, I've just got really bad news. I resigned on Friday, so now I don't really have the clout to organise your job. I was like, but the job, and I was the first one to say, but the job's, what do you mean the job's organised? I actually was hoping you're going to tell us that we could get some back pay for the 2 weeks that we'd just been sitting around. And then he sort of promptly said, oh, no, well, look, there's, I am still good friends. This was the sentence that was kind of reasonably disturbing. I am still good friends with the creative director in direct marketing. And so I was like, great, so you're not friends at all with the creative director in the part of the business that we're supposed to be working in. So then we met that guy who then promptly said, well, you've kind of not really got any DM in your book at all. Like, so I'll give you a call if there's some campaigns that come up that require skills. So we freelanced around London for like 6-7 months. And that was good, actually. It was quite cool. It wasn't quite as simple as having a real job. But and then we got a call from recruiter one day to say, come into AMV BBDO. What's it, just AMV then? Yeah. To meet these two creative directors called, and I think it was just nicknames we got given, like Little and Large. God knows what their names are.
That's the way it works in London.
I think they might actually still, or up until quite recently, they were the CCOs of that agency. But we went to meet them, rocked into their office. There was just, I just remember this wall of awards, which was reasonably intimidating, in a very cool office. And they looked at a book and they said, oh, this is all very fashionable advertising at the moment. And we're like, oh.
Is that good or bad?
What exactly does that mean? And they were like, well, there's not a lot of copy. It's all simple visual ideas with a logo and a couple of words. And they looked to Seymour, who I was partner with at the time, said, so where is, you know, so you're the copywriter. And he was like, oh, but I do ideas too. Like I'm doing the ideas too. I mean, I know there's not a lot of copy, but so it was a sort of bit of an awkward moment. And then they said, oh, this is not really our cup of tea. So we were like, oh, this is not going well. And then they said, oh, but there's this guy down the corridor called Nick Worthington, and he's into this kind of stuff in a quite a dismissive manner. And then we thought at the time it sort of sounds like a bit of a brush off. But then the next morning we got a call from Nick's PA to say, can you come in tomorrow? So we thought, well, there's some sort of reasonable urgency to this. This sounds like there's actually a potential job. Rocked in there. So they all had the same shelving systems, and we were very impressed by Little and Large's collection of awards. Then we walked into Nick's office, and he had so many awards that there were sort of the classic photography extension support poles under his shelving system to support it from collapsing off the wall, and that was seriously intimidating. I don't think I've ever seen so many yellow pencils and what is it? London Internationals are the ones with the wings and the.
I'm pretty sure that nobody in those days bothered to enter London International.
There was some sort of, I can't remember quite what it was. Something to do with maybe it was a man or a woman with a bow and arrow or something.
British television.
Right. A lot of those. Yeah. But yeah, mainly just a hell of a lot of lines. So that was a really good interview. So we sat down with him. He went through the book and he really liked it. And then it's sort of halfway through that interview, there started to be a lot of questions about New Zealand, a lot of questions about Mojo in particular, and yes, we'd worked there, and yep, we'd actually just come from there not so long ago. What the characters were like in Mojo, and you know what the state of the industry was in bits and pieces. So we kind of went through all of that, and we're like, oh, there's a lot of questions about where we've been working in bits and pieces, and then he said, right, so really keen to offer you a job. It's at Mojo in Auckland. Which we were like, this is not really. Why is nothing panning out at this point?
Yeah. So for the uninitiated, there might be some. Nick Worthington was at the time highly regarded and highly awarded creative in London, and was on his way down to come in as, I don't know what the title was in those days, creative director of Mojo.
I think he might have been the first ECD. Mojo's first ECD, maybe.
Yeah,
it was definitely something. It was, it was like senior creative. It was definitely there was a lot of creative directors in Mojo at the time, so it was definitely whatever the title was. It was above that. Yeah, no, it was ECD because at the same time there was Darren Spiller, was the regional ECD, and I remember they used to have a few tense words about how many ECDs you could have in the network.
I know from the outside looking at Mojo, it was very difficult to understand any hierarchy of.
I think during that second tour of Mojo, it was pretty clear when you were in there. I think because the clients were quite diverse. So just to go back. So you took that job. So Nick, so we politely declined because we were in London and we basically had sold everything.
It's a long commute.
It is, yeah. It was, and we kind of still felt like the freelancing, we're getting to see a hell of a lot of places. It's kind of interesting. And I think Fallon had just opened up, and we kept flirting with Fallon. So we kept sort of having different conversations with them, working on freelance briefs.
Was that Frentham, Richard Frentham?
I think so. Yeah, that rings a bell. And it was a really cool agency. So you go to AMV, we did amazing work, but it was still felt quite corporate. And, but you go down there and it was, the whole place was, hell of a lot more fun. I think there were no offices. Everything was divided by sort of butchers, aprons hanging from the ceiling kind of thing. The classic sort of white plastic and my first experience of indoor astroturf, that kind of stuff. And it just looked like a hell of a lot of fun. And their style of work was really good. So we were kind of still sort of holding up for a great role. And then we got a call from Nick's PA probably a month after he got to Auckland saying, like, you guys need to come back. There's a hell of a lot of great opportunities here, more clients coming in the door. So we said no again, and then I think we got really poor.
So that Nick was calling up from Auckland?
Yeah, gave us a call from Auckland. And then I think, we got properly poor. And I remember we were sitting there one day going, oh shit, I wonder if there's still a job. And then the next day they rang. I think we got into summer and the agency's basically closed. There was just no work. So it was this sort of, is it mid-year, everyone goes on holiday and...
In London?
Yeah.
It isn't like Auckland. The first time I came to Auckland, I arrived in November and worked for a month, and then they said Christmas is coming up, and they said, I won't take much time off because I don't really know anyone. And they went, but the office is shut for 3 weeks. Like, but what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, it was pretty much. I remember just suddenly we had all this different freelance. And then we talked to the recruiter one day, and they're like, "Oh, there's just not going to be any work for about kind of 6 weeks."
I was never aware of that in London. Maybe I was the one doing all the work while everyone else was at the beach.
Yeah, maybe it was just all the creative directors were gone, so there was no one there to decide who was going to do what. But at that point, we were pretty poor, so we decided, time to come home. So go back to Mojo. Mikhail was still there. Lockie was still there. I think Hanko was still there, and then started to fill in the team kind of even more. So we had I think Len Cheeseman actually came on staff.
Yeah.
Chris and John
from Saatchi's
Wellington.
John Plimmer.
Yep, John Plimmer. Chris Bleakley came on board. So, and I think that I can't remember whether they were full time, but they were in the office for sort of two or 3 days a week.
So just back to London, did you get anything out of any consequence? Anything that you were proud of? No,
nothing. No, absolutely nothing at all.
So you're back at Mojo for the second time?
Yeah, back at Mojo for the second time, but it was sort of quite different. It was always a really energetic agency, but now it was much bigger. So kind of, I think first time we were there was maybe sort of 50 odd people, and now it was sort of closer to 100. So yeah, so it was sort of from a creative point of view, it was a fantastic time.
Yeah.
Like I think there was over the period that we'd been away, they picked up a lot of quite dull clients, as well as the great ones that they sort of had. So it was all about bringing those clients up to speed with proper Mojo work. So there was always, and Nick was very good at figuring out how to turn a Hewlett Packard, for example, into something interesting. Some of the brands that I think probably he had more experience on from a international or London-based kind of point of view, where he could kind of actually go, no, actually we can do something really good with that. Whereas I think in the past we'd sort of gone, I'll just let them we'll do the best we can, but let's not try too hard. Nestle was the same. The work started getting much better for Nestle. And then, the standard, Bluebird was always great for good creative concepts. We had Coca-Cola, Spates, obviously. We started to picked up big beer accounts. And then in the car space, I think we dabbled. We used to do a lot of work for Toyota out of Australia. So Toyota was a classic kind of Mojo client over in Sydney, and those briefs started to spread around. So under Nick's influence, I think the realm of, or the breadth of the briefs used to come from Australasia rather than just New Zealand. So it suddenly started to get, a bit more interesting. So we did...
How long were you there the second time around?
Second time, I think it was maybe 3 years, 2 years, 3 years. Yeah, it was a good...
What was your favourite bit of work at that time?
Good chunk of time. Probably the Hewlett Packard campaign, which was really cool. Was actually a DM.
Not a sentence I've heard before.
Yeah, no, and a client I've never ever come across again.
Yeah.
But it was a campaign for every year they had this huge Hewlett Packard technology sale, and we came up with an idea of, and everyone was still. They were trying to get people out of fax machines and into high-end copiers that could do faxing and all sorts of stuff as well.
Sorry, children, fax machines were a way of communicating.
Fax machines weren't even something from my generation, but this was for people who were
from
serious
the Stone Age.
laggards. Yeah. And fax machine was what was it? Sort of like the worst version of a photocopier that you could send images around the world, highly pixelated, and
it was incredible, but. They had like 10 years of fax machines, and they were like big when they came in, and then when they went, they just went.
Incredibly poor copies of documents that you wanted to send around the world. It was basically just readable.
Yeah.
It was amazing that they were even sort of could be legal documents when they came out the other end. So the campaign was really quite simple in hindsight. But so all these people had fax machines, so we set up built the idea that your fax machine was basically on its last leg. So it was a note from the fax machine. So a mass fax went out to all of these potential clients, but it was actually a letter from the fax machine saying, I'm on my last legs. really lovely sort of composed letter, beautifully art directed, considering they had to come out the other end of the fax machine. And basically,
Seymour had actually written something at that time.
Seymour had actually sat down and written quite a lengthy piece of copy, very, very well.
Well done, Seymour.
And then we spent a lot of time trying to figure out how you can make a fax actually look cool. And then that went on to, I think that was a D&AD winning piece. Did
you put a film together for that?
No, we did not do a case study. It was pre-case study.
Yeah. It was so case study, because if you're on a jury and a bit of paper comes across and you're like, there's no context, and you...
No, but I think we had a visual of a fax machine. I think we found a way to bring that one alive. But that was actually the probably the same time we were there. They were doing the Speight's Great beer delivery. Yeah. And that was the first proper case study in my memory of actually having to put together a film to sell your award entry, and that was brilliantly
created an industry.
Brilliantly done. Yeah, and so that was right about the same time I met my wife, because she was the producer of Speight's Great Beer Delivery. And that was probably also the first time we sort of understood that activations could be amazing and have real scale, and we need to start thinking about activations from the point of view of not just something small in New Zealand, but something really big that could happen around the world.
That was extraordinary. It's one of those things that if a junior team comes up, we go, yeah, well, that's not going to happen. And then somehow, I'm guessing because of Nick's relationship with the client, that they did make it happen. And I think I'm right in saying, I think Nick maybe told me this, or somebody involved in it, that after it had happened, the client said, never again.
Yeah, it was logistically a massive nightmare.
Yeah.
From memory.
Yeah. Again, children, this was Speight's took a pub to London.
Yeah,
took a pub on a boat to London, which is just incredible. I was completely in awe of that.
Literally built a pub, and I assume it was built down south. Chucked it on a
or was it just like a cabin painted, looked like a pub, which would have been fine.
It was beautifully done. Yeah. Beautifully done. I think it was put it on a Ukrainian fishing trawler or something like that. It was something.
So who organised that? Was that Sasha?
Sasha organised all of that, and then I think the idea was, it was sold as one of those classic ideas of every day there'll be this amazing content that people want to watch online, and of course, a bunch of Ukrainians and some poor bastards from Southland who've been trapped on a sort of floating pub. They don't have a lot to do. There's not a lot of fun they can have for sort of 90 days as they sort of chug slowly toward London. So I think that was probably the logistical part was pretty hard, and I think it's a really good lesson in understanding the role of PR based creative ideas. Like you have this PR spike, it rides a media wave, and that is actually already a predetermined amount of time. It's about 48 hours for any one idea, and that's basically just how the media covers a story. They only cover it for 48 hours until there's something else happens. So if the ship had sunk, that would have got another 48 hours, but it was hard to get another spike. And I think the big problem they had was the pub was arriving in time for the final of the World Cup and the All Blacks Rugby World Cup, and the All Blacks got knocked out. So
in Cardiff by France.
Yeah, and so all the Kiwis who were supposed to come down to the pub, as it was amazing. It was moored on the side of the Thames.
How did Sasha again organise the mooring space on the side of the Thames?
Yeah, absolutely. She had to radio, I think, coming up the Thames on the freighter, whatever it was, with the pub on the top. She had to radio London Bridge to have the bridge raised. Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah. But behind the scenes...
Sorry, to what extent was it your campaign?
No. That was... I think that was a Nick idea.
Yeah.
That entire...
That's dumb, and only Nick could have thought up something so dumb and got it through.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I remember at the time watching Nick in a meeting with a client and how he would sell an idea and going, this is just brilliant.
Yeah.
It's just conveying... I mean, it was a combination of... I'm from London.
Well, generally,
I've got a fantastic accent, and I've made these things in the past, and just confidence.
Never worked for me, but
it was just a confidence that it was hard to argue with.
Yeah,
and and I suppose if the client
we're going to send a pub to London, that's hard to argue with.
Well, I think it was easy for the client to almost say yes, in the sense that by the time we get into logistics, it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
The moment they said yes, that was the the trap. It was like
because when the senior guy says yes, like the guys below are like, oh fuck, no,
well, and I
we've
think
got to do the work.
the culture of Mojo is so can do. You know, it's like, right, we've got a yes right now. We're just gonna. Well, you said yes, and we've made this happen, and we're making this happen, and we're making this. I think that was kind of the magic of the place. If you could get a yes, I think a client would assume something would fall over at some point, but it just wouldn't. It was just, and I think that was a really good lesson in, you know, the idea is one thing, but you've got to make the damn thing happen.
Yeah,
and that's just about being really determined. Really, just finding a way all the time, being flexible every time there's a barrier. You've got
I absolutely agree. There's all
through.
like students or guys will come up with stuff that, as you know, interesting as sending a pub to the UK, but yeah, how's it going to happen?
Yeah,
how's it going to happen?
I think that's always been the great culture in New Zealand. Like when we're at Generator, you know, we'd have a great idea for something, some sort of sort of stunty piece of outdoor around town, and you know, in the end, the client wasn't going to pay for it. All you needed was a yes, and then, you know, you'd find yourself cutting out the posters yourself and sticking them to power poles around town, and then taking shots of your outdoor campaign and sending it to D&AD. And, you know, while it was scammy, it was actually just teaching you that you have to own the concept. You've got to get it done if you want to.
I think that's another good lesson for any students out there, is that you have to get off your arse and do these things. Maiko and I working in London, strapping washing machines onto the side of billboards for a campaign, and it was us doing it because no one else was going to do it. And that was in London, when they're supposed to have big budgets.
Truth.
And so.
But anyway, then you went to Australia?
Then I went off to Australia. I went to Saatchi's to work for Maiko. So it was a freelancer. I think I kind of went in there for a week's work and then stayed for 7 or 8 months or something like that. That was really good. That was at the time, who was in there? There was like Maddie and Dave.
Yeah.
Jay and Andy.
Yeah.
And Dave, Jay and Andy.
Andy DeLallo, Matt and Dave, who are now, are they Facebook or are they Google?
Yeah, no, Facebook. Yeah, ECD's at Facebook. Jay Benjamin, I don't know. I think he started his own agency back in the US, man.
He was working with Smarty at Saatchi's New York.
Yeah. He was ECD of Saatchi's New York there for a bit. Then, there's a bunch of other people. It was another really good crew, and lots of big TV was going through at the time. Lots of big beer campaigns. Lots of things for what was Telecom, Toyota. Lots of chocolate milk for some reason. I can't remember. Yellow Pages. Yeah, there was a hell of a lot of good. It was probably one of those times when there were lots of big budgets and lots of big brands. And although all the teams were enormously competitive, there was enough to go around.
Yeah, I think that so Saatchi's Wellington was New Zealand advertising for a long time, and that moved up culture to a certain extent, and the business certainly moved up to Auckland, and Saatchi's Auckland was booming for a time, and it's kind of fallen back since then. So,
yeah, there was probably a bit of a cultural issue in there that we couldn't quite see from the creative department, but yeah, no, that was a good agency at the time. And then I got the offered the role of head of art at Saatchi's, but at the same time I got offered my first CD role, creative director role at Lowe, which was sort of a strange agency that I didn't really know anything about, and they had two really good clients, which was Lotteries and Vodafone. So we went in there, pulled in James Herman as a creative partner because he was a really good strategist that I knew from Mojo and had a really good creative bent and was a pretty good and could write pretty well. What we sort of didn't know is that there were two CEOs in that business, and the business, when it got sold to Lowe, they had an earn-out, and the CEO who'd been running the business for the bulk of the time had actually left the building. So yeah, it was an interesting, and the one who had the relationship with Lotto and Vodafone left the building. So it was an interesting time. So it was a good move in the sense that every interesting agency experience is kind of invaluable at some point. But from a long-term career point of view, Lowe was not going anywhere.
How long were you there?
I think that was probably about 2 years, maybe just under 2 years. And Yeah, no, it was good. It was good in a lot of respects. I mean, I think the interesting thing is the more chaotic the agencies you work in, you learn two things. So in a stable agency, you learn your creative craft.
Yeah.
In an unstable one, you learn the business, which is quite interesting. And you learn a hell of a lot more about client relationships when things are unstable than you do when things are stable, because you see either how people manage things, incredibly difficult situations incredibly badly, or difficult situations incredibly well.
Tell me if I'm wrong. There was a campaign for Lotto that got pulled. Was that right? The Advisor.
Yes, so that was before. So basically, that I think Lowe had won the business, and there was some sort of relationship in there.
Yeah.
Won the business, put out this awful campaign for what was traditionally a really creative client, and then I got hired and James to come in and create the next campaign in order to save the relationship. We didn't know that was the case though. So when we came in the door, so we weren't quite aware that it was that reliant on the work that we were doing. So I think we did a Instant Kiwi campaign, which was the first one we did.
Skiing, was it?
Skiing.
I'm seeing snow in the crystal ball.
There's snow. There was snow. I think that there was a few executions.
Snow.
I think that one was something to do with a Yeti.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't the greatest Instant Kiwi campaign. I can tell you that much. But it was cool. It was good fun to work on, and it was a good. It was definitely a good experience in there. And then the other creative client that we had was Vodafone. Probably the best piece of work we created in that time was sort of a retail offer that came out of Japan called something like Love Vodafone or something. And it was you had a $6 monthly bill, nominate one individual, and you could call and text them as much as you can. So we had to name the product, design the product, and it was called Best Mates.
Yeah.
And then we created a campaign for that, which was, my first experience of probably taking everything we'd learnt at Mojo from how to do retail and brand at the same time, but with an enormous budget into retail and brand. So it was a 60-second retail commercial for Best Mates. And it was, Best Mate, I think, is actually still a product today. And so that would have been like 2006. And it's still to this day the most successful Vodafone thing they've ever done. So whenever you see Vodafone coming up for pitches, it regularly does. They wander around with this chart, and on the chart there's a massive spike, which is Best Mates, and in every pitch I've ever come across for Vodafone, it's always referred to as, we'd like to get back to this sort of place one day.
Did you work with, or did you come across Lionel Hunt when you were at Lowe?
I met Lionel Hunt once. It's an interesting kind of chat, but I think during that period at Lowe, the way I kind of understood it was Lionel kind of had sold out of everything. I don't think he had any commercial interest in the business. He was sort of a figurehead chairman of some kind, and he would kind of fly in to solve problems. So Vodafone campaign came out, 2 campaigns came out for Vodafone that went really well. Then there was a new marketing manager, head of marketing. But we were within 2 weeks, the whole business was up for pitch. And I think our view of it at the time was like, this can't possibly be happening. Someone at Vodafone will figure this out, and this pitch will be called off. And we've just done 2 fantastic campaigns that have worked the nuts off for the client. But no, the pitch continued, and then I think the business ended up going to Colenso. But this, in classic sort of mad ad fashion, the note went out to the sort of Lowe network saying, Vodafone, which is a very big account at the time, is in jeopardy in New Zealand. Someone help. So we got sent this guy from Hong Kong, and the first sign of trouble was we got a phone call from his PA in Hong Kong saying, can you make sure that there's a limousine from the airport? And I think the response is, oh yeah, sure, there'll just, there'll be a silver cab or whatever it is, corporate cab.
Yeah.
And then she rang me to say, we've looked at corporate cabs on the internet. No, it needs to be an actual limousine. I'm like, okay, this is getting strange already. So this guy showed up. He sort of rocked into the agency. He was all sort of swept back hair, like sort of golden gecko, but quite short and had a real issue. And he had a massive open shirt and with a huge green ticky hanging down. So he was a really odd character. He came up with the plan to retain the business. Once we'd sort of told the backstory, he came up with the idea to retain the business was to take the client out get a whole lot of strippers, ply him with Class A substances, and then take photos. And we literally just sat in this meeting going,
that's an excellent strategy.
I cannot believe that this is a conversation. This guy's been sent to us by the Lowe Network. He's insane. He's strange, weird dictator of a character. He's got a giant ticky, and he's sitting in the meeting telling us to frame the client. So that was really weird. That was really, really weird. No, we said, "Oh look, mate, if you can make that happen over here, you go and do that. We'll just stick with trying to win the pitch with some good creative ideas." Then the next thing that happened is he flew in Andy Lish, who was an old mate from somewhere, and you probably would come across Andy Lish.
Oh, Lishy, yeah.
Lishy. And so Lishy is a brilliant creative, but dropping him into this situation is probably not ideal.
Brilliant, hugely talented, bit wayward,
bit wayward. So I remember. So the work went from being on track, where we had, the same sort of work that we'd already been really successful with, into this really strange and twisted LSD experience. And then the next thing that happened was he'd hired all of Hooker Lodge for a weekend, and then had promptly basically to take all of the Vodafone senior management to Hooker Lodge and obviously win them over, or maybe play them all with some sort of hookers at Hooker Lodge and take photographs. And I'm not sure what his plan was. So he spent $40,000 of sort of agency money booking Hooker Lodge, paid cash, then sent off these invites to everyone at Vodafone, who promptly said, "Well, we can't possibly take you up on the offer because you're in the middle of a pitch." So then the next thing that happens is there's an email goes out to all staff, who would like to go to Hooker Lodge for the weekend? And we're, of course, actually trying to win a pitch and do some work, so no one's particularly keen, but we all get forced to go to Hooker Lodge. So that was pretty weird. And then the next weekend, he then hired a house, $10,000 house on Waiheke for a brainstorm, which James Herman and I were forced to sort of attend, which was just some sort of strange, drunken... Well, basically where James and I sort of sat sober and watched two very drunk men stagger around a house, sticking yellow post-it notes to walls and talking nonsensically until the ferry turned up and we could escape back to Auckland. It was a brilliant experience in all of the wrong parts of advertising under pressure. It was brilliant to watch.
Right, I'm currently in the process of writing a book about the absurdities, some of the absurdities of advertising, and I wish I'd had some of these stories because they'd be in there.
That was absolutely amazing.
This is getting real interesting.
You're listening to Truth
and
Soul.
Then I got the offer to go to Sydney to start a creative agency on the side of a media agency. And that media agency was called Razor, and they were basically like the Naked model. So kind of pretty much just as Naked was coming out, Razor had...
Were they ex-Mojo guys who started?
They were ex-Mojo guys, but they were Mojo guys who were about 10 years older than me, so I'd never actually met them. So back in the day, Mojo used to send their sort of talented Australians into Auckland for kind of training, develop their skills, and then they'd send them back to Australia. And these are two of the guys who'd been in prior to me coming up from Wellington, Andrew Wynne and Simon Rush. So Winnie was an amazing strategist, Rushy great media planner, both just, really, really bright, really charming. Clients love them. And they built this fantastic media business really quick. And as part of the media business, they kept getting offered creative contracts and then putting them out to freelance. And so at the same time as they had established their business, this agency called Three Drunk Monkeys had appeared on the scene, and so they kept sending off work off to Three Drunk Monkeys for freelance, and the monkeys would then would try and steal the actual account. So that's why that was their motivation to set up a creative business. So I went over there, did that for 4 years, and we built a really good business over there. We had Nike, Subaru, SBS, which is a big multicultural TV station, state-funded, a really, really interesting station. We probably don't have the equivalent of that in New Zealand. And then we had sort of News Corp and, really good mix of big clients. And we built that to about 65 staff. Probably the best, favourite work from that period is we won gold at the One Show for SBS ident series. So basically, really beautifully designed, kind of art directed concept around inspiration that we kind of created for them. That was very cool. And then another gold line for Nike for She Runs the Night, which is this very cool campaign about taking the ownership back of parks at night. So women were mortally afraid of running basically after 7 p.m. in any parks around Sydney and that sort of stuff. And this was a whole campaign about running in groups and confidence and the ability to go out and train at night. And that was very cool. And then during that time, Sasha and I got married. So we lived around from Bondi, but we got married and then we decided we probably want to have kids. So it was time to come back to New Zealand, and we sold up, came back, and then took the role at Y&R, which was an agency that all the talent had left the building, including you, Paul, over time. And so it was a pretty odd place when we sort of arrived in there. And the plan was probably buggered, but it'll pay the bills for sort of 18 months and then we'll start another agency, another independent agency. But then we had kids, and kids take up quite a lot of time and you don't get any sleep.
That's why I've avoided them.
These things couldn't really... Yeah. Things didn't quite pan out. But then the agency, we sort of got it on track, moved the whole office over to City Works Depot and set up a much... And that changed the culture. We just managed to find a great location that wasn't so sort of corporate and mystery, not mysterious, but sad and full of ghosts.
The Parnell Corner, I didn't actually spend that long there because I was over in Melbourne most of the time. But that corner, just
horrible. I'm pretty sure it's the same architect who designed the CCTV building that collapsed in Christchurch. Whenever I'd watch the sort of footage of what that building looked like, they're remarkably similar. It just had a very bad vibe to it, that building. And I think probably the worst thing was probably the first day when I turned up and we're still using spray glue for mounting things and for presentations, and I got taken to the spray glue booth, which was 4 floors down in the basement, and on the way down every single floor was empty. And it was explained to me that the agency used to be all 4 floors, but the spray booth had never been moved, so every time you went to spray glue something you had to be faced with the shrinking carcass of a business.
Were they paying rent for all the floors, or they?
No, I don't know. They were all empty, so maybe they were. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised. So we moved that agency. We started to win more business, and I started to hire really good people. Was able to hire really good people. It was pretty damn hard at the beginning, and then the business started to go really well. And
so at that time, you were CEO and ECD. Because I
came in as ECD, and then it was a bit of there was just some legacy staffing issues in that building. There was basically no creatives, but there was 6 or 7 people in the finance department. There was a whole lot of media who were doing a great job and probably keeping the business alive, but there was actually no resource to actually pitch on a business, on a client at all, of any real scale. There's just nothing there. It was quite amazing. There was no production facility producer at all. There was a 2-day-a-week producer who worked on, I think, Postie of all clients. And the clients that were still there were they were just the ones that were just too lazy to leave. There was not one client with any ambition whatsoever inside that building. It was quite terrifying. Or any staff, really, aside from in media, I would say, with any ambition to do anything. And we needed to hire creative, so we ended up, the role got offered to me as you can do the CEO role, and that's because my time in Sydney, we started the business, so you were doing everything from day one anyway. So we understood the numbers, how the business worked, how to recruit and how to extract a good margin, and how to negotiate. And there was all those abilities were kind of there, and it meant that I could take the salary that we were paying for the CEO at the time and actually hire some staff, so people who were going to be on the tools. So that went really well. From the point of view, we brought in Tom Payne, brought in Maria Ward, who were both really, really good creatives, and then finally we had sort of enough of a core to actually start to pitch and win. And because it wasn't a big business, being the CEO didn't really mean a hell of a lot. There wasn't a huge number of responsibilities. There was just a bit of reporting in bits and pieces. But then as the business grew and the agency became successful, then suddenly that turned into an actual role. Yes. Where you get a lot of focus from around the globe, a lot of requests, a lot of reporting. What are you guys doing? Can you help out on this? And the problem was that we were probably one of the few Y&Rs in the world that was actually growing and winning awards and doing work that was of interest, while the rest of the network was kind of caving in. So you rapidly went from an agency that no one cared about or paid any attention to suddenly an actual, seen as a resource that could be used for pitches all around the world.
What, were you getting paid for those pitches?
No, not at all. Yeah. And we're expected to spend a hell of a lot of time in Australia and all that sort of thing, or we need you to come up to New York and help on this. And I think it's that old school mentality of, we'll get the New Zealanders, they'll be so excited about a trip to Manhattan. They'll come up, they'll drop everything and they'll come up, and it's like, well, actually,
quite busy.
We're quite busy, and we've got a really good business, and we've got really good clients who are actually. We don't need to pitch right now. We need to deliver to the clients that we spend a lot of time working with and building relationships with. So everyone started getting pulled in a whole lot of directions, and it's just we're just so far away from the rest of the world. That travel gets very unglamorous very, very quickly.
Yes, yeah. Like for me, it's like one every 6 months is kind of any more than that. And you're like, no. We spent so much time on planes during that period that probably Tom Payne and I and Jono Key, so much time on planes that were like literally just didn't want to travel anymore. It was just broken. And you're not yourself. You fly to New York and you're not yourself for 3 days. So if you jump into a meeting at 8 a.m, you're just speaking complete nonsense on the first day. I don't need to go to New York to have that experience. So it was a really good 7 years in Y&R in a lot of respects, but just I mean, if Y&R had been another network banner, it probably would probably still be there. But that particular network was just unhappy place. Why? I don't know if you read. I wrote an article about. I did read your article. I don't know what you. I don't know how to put this diplomatically or not diplomatically, but Y&R just always. It just seemed on a decline. It just never seemed to. And I'm not talking about New Zealand. I'm talking about the network. Totally. No, I think the real issue in there is I think you get to you've got a great business in New Zealand. Then when you go to Australia, you expect to meet people who are doing things probably a little bit better than you are. It's a little bit bigger market, but which just wasn't the case. And then you'd get to New York and you'd expect them to be, your global CCO to be this amazing character with these great ideas. And it just wasn't the case. And I think you rapidly realised that the reason everyone was focusing on that and your little agency in New Zealand is because they were actually leading the way in the network. And that's the last thing you want, because you want to learn. You're constantly going, well, I want to learn from the guy above me, I want to learn from that guy, but there was no one above you who had been making ads or successful advertising any time in the last 20 years. Our conversation was endlessly about award-winning double-page spreads when we went to New York, and we were just like, we don't even do double-page spreads. It's not even a thing. It was terrifying. And like Tony Granger's a lovely guy, but I mean, I think when we were doing McWhopper, he was busy telling us everything that was wrong with it. Afterwards, he was telling us how brilliant an idea it was that he'd come up with. It was just nonsense. So it was a very hard... So how did McWhopper come about? How did that?
McWhopper was the original McWhopper was a bottom drawer idea of Tom Payne's, and then it popped out in a meeting at Y&R, and we had Burger King as a media client, and so James Herman went off to a meeting about something else at Burger King, and mentioned this creative idea, and managed to talk James Woodbridge, the CMO. He was ex-McDonald's, right? He was ex-McDonald's, into a meeting. So he kind of lulled him into a meeting where we were going to loosely talk about this small idea about nothing much. Meanwhile, we'd built a massive presentation to surprise him with. So it's a huge presentation. He left that meeting basically saying it's the best idea I've ever seen, and then it rapidly vanished into nothing. So we kind of kept pushing him. And eventually he gave us the email address for this new I think North American CMO Fernando Machado. So then we built...
Was he from the Philippines?
No, he's Brazilian.
Brazilian, okay, yeah.
So then we built a cell video of the concept. And yeah, and it's one of those great ideas. Like every conversation about the concept, it got better and it got better and it got better.
You're listening to Truth
and Soul.
The New Zealand Advertising Podcast.
So then it all got put to bed. It was sort of like just wasn't really going anywhere. And then we sent this thing off to Fernando. So we spent a lot of time crafting the cell video. Jono, Tom and I, sat around the computer, we compiled this email, sent it off, sent the link. And within 40 minutes, we've still got a screenshot of it today. We got this sort of 72-point uppercase email back from Fernando in bright red saying, "This is the best fucking idea I've ever seen. We are definitely making this. When can we get on a Skype call? I want to meet you guys, blah, 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 blah." And that was, we spent a lot of time staring at that email.
I was going to say, the fighting and the determination that you guys showed to get that through, when you kept getting knocked back, is extraordinary. And dare I say that probably I would have pulled the plug long ago and gone, "Oh, this is just too hard." But it's why you're very successful in what you do. But it comes down to a client going,
Absolutely.
"Bucket, that's what we're going to do." And I've never met Fernando, but I've heard of him, and he's held in very high regard as a great client and a champion of creativity.
Oh, amazing guy. And I think probably the other thing that people probably don't realise when it comes to Fernando is, like, you want a client who loves a creative idea and will back it, but he's also very creative. So when you're working with him, he's not an art director, he's not a copywriter, but from a strategic point of view, he's very, very smart at understanding which elements of your campaign need to be focused on, which bits you can grow, which bits you can. And I think and in that world of PR and social, like he's got incredibly good connections and now a wealth of case studies of exactly how you make something, not viral is sort of a dirty word, but how you make something incredibly popular and part of the culture. And so he was fantastic at connecting us to different agencies. Like we used Code and Theory in New York, and from a social point of view, like I've never, we just never had the budgets to deal with these sorts of agencies before, but they were just so focused on social content and pushing it out. And to be honest, they weren't really creating a lot of social content. It was more the fact that they had very good connections for pushing out the content that we were creating, which is very hard to do from New Zealand. We talk about influencers here, and they've got 2,500 followers or whatever it is. They're just
in the Greater Hamilton area.
Yes, exactly. I mean, there's just and especially at that time when there was not so much quite so much cynicism around influencers and perspective, they're just really, really well connected. Yeah, cultural icons. You're talking to the cultural icon. You're not talking to Janice from Te. Yeah, that was cool. That was quite amazing. But yeah, no, to your point, like creative, big clients who are really, really smart and massive champions of creative art. They're just damn hard to find.
Yeah, behind every great campaign, that you'll find that. I think there's a lot of great campaigns thought up by smart people all over the world, but very few of them get to see the light of day because they need to have someone on the client side with vision and the way to get it through. So that campaign went on to be, was that won millions of awards at Cannes Grand Prix?
Yeah, I think it was about
the most awarded of the year.
20-something lines in the end, 2 Grand Prix. Yeah.
So you were up. You went to. You were at Cannes for that week.
Yep.
Yeah, you were judging as well, or just celebrating?
No, I think that week we were lucky enough to not have to judge at the same time.
That's the great thing about Cannes. You just don't want to be judging.
No, but it was a very messy week. But yeah, no, it's an amazing experience when you've got one of the ideas of the year. And we flew to a lot of places. I think Tom and I flew to London for 24 hours to go to D&AD.
How was that? Did you meet up with people that you knew from London before?
We met. We sort of went to the pub and caught up with our London mates and that sort of stuff, and then went off to the show and mainly caught up with other agencies who had participated. So there's an amazing agency called Turner Duckworth, And they're amazing designers. Like, I mean, just the breadth of the...
How did they get involved?
Of the work. They have the global contract for design. So we had James Wendelborn, our head of design, had designed amazing packaging. And to this day, I'd still argue with Fernando that our packaging was better than Turner Duckworth's. But theirs was very, very... it was very, very good. So they won. I think they might have won a line for... Or they definitely won a pencil for design. So we caught up with them, and we had a great night. And actually it was a big night for Colenso as well. So there was
at D&AD.
At D&AD. So there was a bunch of the Colenso guys. There would have been pedigree, a few bits and pieces. I think the evening started off with Colenso. I think got about 3 pencils before we'd got one, and then there's a photograph somewhere of Dave Brady giving me the fingers from across the table when I think we ended up with about 7 yellow pencils, and then the agency of the year. Yeah, but, it was great. It was good. I mean, they were doing really well. We were doing really well. It was good. It was a great fun night.
Really good. And were London guys coming across and going good on you Kiwis? Or were they...
totally. Yeah. No, it was actually a much nicer show than going to Cannes, because you're sitting at a table. You had a beer. It wasn't 35 degrees, and everyone wasn't sweating madly, and you didn't have to jump up on a really embarrassing stage like you have to do at Cannes, which is quite awkward. Yeah, it's just English. It's just a bit cooler.
British, please.
Yeah, British.
Well.
Yeah, no, it was. That was definitely a highlight. But Tom and I think it probably took at least 2 or 3 weeks to recover from that 24-hour trip, and we crawled back into our seats on the Air New Zealand plane to come home, and we were just broken humans. I'm sure I think we were both crying. From just total exhaustion.
And presumably luggage was a bit tricky because you...
Yeah. Oh, no, well, they were pencils.
So they're wooden, they're not too heavy.
So no, it wasn't too bad. And I think, awards-wise, I think getting Cannes Lions home is the absolute nightmare. They're just heinous, unwieldy,
I know,
heavy things.
So many...
I think Steve Kane almost lost the bottom of his suitcase on there. Trip to Cannes, he had sort of a plastic, it looked like a robust suitcase, but I'm pretty sure at one stage there was a bit of line sticking through a hole in one of the cases.
Richard Lowsby and Pete Thompson from DDB were up in South Korea, and for some reason they gave them some swords as I think it was a... instead of a line, they picked up a sword, or given a ceremonial sword for some reason, and they then had to explain, going through customs, why they had 2 swords in there, which were a little bit tricky, but they weren't arrested.
The best, Tom and I were discussing this the other day. The actual best looking award is a Kinsale shark. We decided very super cool. It's like a little shark sticking out of the head out of the water. Probably not as coveted as a lot of other awards, but from a design point of view, it's actually cool.
In London, Mike and I won a gold shark, which we didn't even know we were entered for, and we never got the chance. It sounds like fun to go to Kinsale to.
Yeah, we were lamenting the fact that we'd never entered on the Y&R sort of ticket.
Yeah,
I think the awards budget was pretty significant. We could have entered anything we liked, but it didn't occur to us to enter.
Well, I'm sure Tony Granger would have been quite happy.
Oh, exactly. He probably was one who said no Kinsale for you.
He's probably still dining out on that.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to anybody who's sitting out there thinking, I want to go and start my own agency?
I think it's you can't do it by yourself. Like, you've got to do it with a really good team, and we have 12 partners in the core business, 13 in the core business. It's, we've been working
That's a lot of salaries to start with.
It is. It was a lot of salaries. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first 3 months it was Kate and I, and then from January 15th, we had to pay the first salary bill with all 12 in there. So, no, it's been good. I think you've got to be able to run your numbers, and you have to be honest with yourself. And you can probably do what we've done with 3 or 4 people, but because we're a team that have been working together for so long, we just took the punt. We weren't like, all 13 of these people are awesome. We know we can...
You trust each other, you know your strengths.
Absolutely. We had a huge pitch last week against one big network, a couple of independents, bits and pieces, and it's just with that group of people, we know we can win a pitch against anyone, because we've just been working with them for so long. You don't need 100 people to do it. You just need 12 really good ones. Yeah.
On that point, Josh. I'm going to stop you there for the very important reason that I'm going fishing shortly this afternoon with James McKee, who I think you know.
Oh, lovely, James.
So thank you so much for a great chat. Lovely to hear some of those stories and the background to the McWhopper, and best of luck with Pitchblack and Partners.
Thank
going
you.
forward.
You've been listening to Truth
And Soul.
The New Zealand Advertising Podcast.
Okay, list of credits. Thank you very much to this week's guest. If you liked it, drop us a line, paul@truthandsoul.co.nz. Thank you very much to everyone at Franklin Road, Jonathan, Cole, the Wastrel, Shane, Vanessa and Gracie, Otis who did the logo, and Matt Stalker who's going to play us out. Thank you.
On the Farewell Drive, we found 100 ways that our hands fit together. Centrifugal force pulls us apart as we spin. Please forgive my trembling hands, crudely silhouetted by the flickering spires of candlelight, while the wicked sleep sound, the anxious toss and turn, thoughts come not as single spies, but in battalions, while the wicked sleep sound, the anxious toss and turn. And it's at times like these that we understand our Father's fascination with dendrology. The family tree is losing its leaves. Please forgive my trembling hands, crudely silhouetted by the flickering spires of candlelight, while the wicked sleep sound, the anxious toss and turn, thoughts come not as single spies, but in battalions, while the wicked sleep sound, the anxious toss and turn.